Mr. President.
Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion does prevail. Secretary will close the roll. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills made special order for immediate consideration. Members, the list is on your desk.
So, members, we have 4 bills on the agenda. We will take the first bill up, followed by a recess. First bill will be Senate File 181, number 32, on special orders. Senator RARICK.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a bill that I've been working with the electrical co-ops and municipals for, I believe it's a little over 4 years. And we have finally come to our agreements with all those involved. And with that, Mr. President, I would move the A4 amendment with that gets the bill in the shape of the agreement.
Senator RARICK moves the A4 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator RARICK moves to amend Senate File number 181 as follows. Page 2 after line 18 insert. This is the A4 amendment.
To the A4 amendment, Senator RARICK.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the A4 amendment puts the bill into the shape of the agreement. This is a bill about replacing and repairing load control receivers for our electric utility or co-ops and municipals. If you have an air conditioner or a water heater or another piece of equipment that runs on an off-peak system, this is the device that turns it on and off. They have been in service for a number of years, and with the upgrades in technology, they all need to be replaced. And one of the hang-ups we were having that was stopping them was the added cost of needing to pull an electrical permit to do all the work. There are tens of thousands of these around the state, so you could see the cost of that for each and every one of them. The agreement we have come to is that the work will be done by a Class A electrical contractor. Many of our utilities have them on their own staff. If they do not, they will hire a local contractor to do the work. It will be for the repair and replacement only. It is for the co-ops and municipals only, and this work will need to be done by December 31st of 2030, so giving them 7.5 years to get the work completed. So, members, I would appreciate your support.
Discussion to the A4 amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the A4 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion does prevail. The amendment is adopted. Members, to the amended Senate File 181. Seeing no further discussions, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File number 181, a bill for an act relating to the state building code.
Third reading. Further discussion. Senator RARICK.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. Again, this is something we've worked on a long time. I really appreciate your support. I want to take this opportunity to, again, say thank you so much to Senator Tomassoni. This is very, very special that you are here on the floor today while I'm doing this bill. It was the honor of my life doing the higher education bill with you and being your voice. And I know we had a movie reference on the floor yesterday. I'm going to use another one. I will be your wingman any day.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its roll call vote. Senate File 181 as amended.
Am I waiting?
Call on Senator Port to report members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report an aye for Senator Dietzig.
Dietzig votes aye. Senator Port.
I report an aye for Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Johnson-Stewart votes aye. Senator Port.
I report an aye for Senator Kent.
Kent votes aye. Senator Port.
I report an aye for Senator Newton.
Newton votes aye. Senator Port.
I report an aye for Senator Wickland.
Wickland votes aye. Senator Port.
And I report an aye for Senator Carlson.
Carlson votes aye. Call on Senator Jasinski to report members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson votes aye.
Anderson votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Dames votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Goggin votes aye.
Goggin votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Housley votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Howell votes aye.
Howell votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Ingebrigtsen votes aye.
Ingebrigtsen votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Westrom votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Tomassoni is here.
You gave him a check, you blocked it.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Matthews votes aye.
Matthews votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Limmer votes aye.
Limmer votes aye. All members having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and no nays. Senate File 181 does pass in its title agreed to. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess to the call of the President.
To that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion does prevail. Members, I have the list of retirees. We have one here today that is going to honor us with his comments. Senator David Tomassoni was started in this body in the year 2001, served 22 years. That is a total of 7,810 days of service to this body. Total legislative experience is 10,730 days worth of total experience. With that, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Senator David Tomassoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have done a good job presiding over the Senate, and I appreciate you keeping my shovel and helmet in the President's office. Members, at this time last year, I wasn't contemplating retirement. I figured if Senator David Senjem could work until he was 100 years old, then I could do it too. As you know, things have changed drastically in my life. The good news is, I wasn't on the list of senators that you honored a few days ago. God rest their souls. The bad news is, all of our names will eventually be on similar resolutions sometime in the future. Being a state senator is an honor and a privilege that comes from the highest source of appointment, a vote of the public. I treasure the time I have been able to work in the Senate. And I use the word work, because this is serious business. Doing the people's work comes with a lot of personal sacrifice and responsibility and is oftentimes hard on family, but it also has its allure. The positives outweigh the negatives in my estimation, and if you enjoy what you do, you will never work a day in your life. Needless to say, I have enjoyed my work here. It's fulfilling, fun and rewarding, but not rewarding in the way of making money. Certainly, no one does this job because of the money. There's something honorable about having a title like senator, though. Just don't take yourself too seriously. The axe can fall quickly if you don't treat the position with respect and humility. When I first came over to the Senate, after serving 8 years in the House, I quickly realized all senators had the same first name. Hi, Senator. Good morning, Senator. How was your weekend, Senator? I guess it comes with the territory. Makes it easy for staff and lobbyists. Just remember 67 faces. You don't need to know one name. How are you today, Senator? It's pretty amazing the breadth and scope of people we run into in doing this job. When I first got elected to the House, I was asked to serve on the Education Committee. It was at that point that I realized what a sheltered life I had led. You mean everyone does not have a mother who has breakfast on the table for you in the morning? We meet people from all walks of life, from the most downtrodden to the rich and famous. The average person has no idea what we do or how extensively we affect their lives. But through it all I have met and become great friends with many people. Tom Mercavina became my best friend, and we did everything together. I could tell you stories for hours, but I remember Dick Cohen's retirement speech of 47 minutes, and I promise not to go that long. I did win a bet with John Jasinski, who thought Dick would speak less than 30 minutes. But I digress. Tommy had a passion for this job like no one I have ever seen. I had to stop answering the phone at 6 a.m. so he wouldn't call me at that time. We lost him too early. I have missed you, my friend. See you in the afterlife. Another classic personality who was another good friend was Jim Metzen. What a beauty he was. Our connection was hockey, and you may not know this about him, but he is still one of the top goalies to ever play in the state high school hockey tournament. He came into my office every day to compare neckties. His were always nicer and more expensive. I miss him too. I imagine, about now, you probably don't want to be on my best friends list. But that is what happens around here. You get to know people, and for whatever reason, they are suddenly gone, only to be replaced by someone you may or may not get to know. I have been blessed to have many people hanging around my office. I would like to think it was my glowing personality, but I think it had way more to do with food and drink. I have gotten to know some of you very well, and I'll have to tell you that I have formed special bonds with Senators Jasinski and Hoffman. I even know their families. I can't take the time to mention all the people I consider to be great friends, but I do have to thank Senator RARICK for taking the reins on my committee this session and leading it to a successful bill. Thank you, Jason, for your hard work, loyalty, and friendship. And then there's Senator Bach. Not only has he been in the legislature for 28 of my 30 years, but he allows me to employ his wife, Laura. Needless to say, we have been through a lot together. When you represent a mining region like our beloved Iron Range, you represent some of the greatest and hardest working people in the state. History credits the Iron Range with winning 2 world wars, building the country's roads, bridges, skyscrapers, and infrastructure. Mining has built our Iron Range schools. The iron runs deep. How many of you knew that mining taxes paid for the original construction of the Capitol? If you didn't know that the Iron Range paid for the Capitol, then I must be shirking my duty. The mining and logging industries provide some of the best middle-class jobs to be found anywhere, yet we are always one recession or economic downturn away from massive layoffs. When times are good, they are very good. But when they go bad, they get very bad. Now, think about this. Throughout all these years of service together, this is the first time that Tom and I have been seatmates. It might have something to do with this independent caucus business. And then I missed this whole session and we didn't get to enjoy each other's company. We have accomplished a lot together. Tom, you did double duty this year, not only carrying your entire legislative package but carrying mine too. For that I can't thank you enough. You are a great friend and a first-rate legislator. You know, when Paul Gazelka came to the Iron Range on unrelated business, we met for lunch at McDonald's. During the height of COVID, drive-up dining was the only option, so we ate in the front seat of my car. There was truly no agenda, yet one thing led to another, and the rest is history. So, thank you, Paul, for making the last 2 years possible. Now, having the office we have was Tom Bach's idea. I told him that he built the Senate office building and we had to office there. But he convinced me that Laura would like the Capitol better, and because I had seniority, I got the biggest office. I have a lot of people to thank. My committee administrators have been Cap O'Rourke, Scott Sandy, Tricia Leet, and Tom Brennan. Senate Counsel Dave Jensen, Dan Mueller, Greg Knopf, Carolyn Fontaine-Doyle, Hannah Grunwald, Joan White, partisan staff Craig Janezik, and Dave Frazier. I know I have forgotten someone, so please know that your work is greatly appreciated. It's my memory that needs work. And then there's Laura. She's been my legislative assistant for 22 years straight. Many of you may not know this, but Laura has been with me longer than she has been with Tom. Through all those years we maybe had one minor spat, and I'm sure I was probably to blame. Some people have described our relationship like that of a brother and sister. So, imagine my surprise when we took those proper behavior classes, and they told us that we cannot say things like "How was your weekend?" Well, Laura is the best. Super organized and efficient. Hell, there were times when she would get things done before I even wanted them done. We have had a good ride. Thanks for your loyalty, friendship, and love. I deeply appreciate all you have done for me. You always managed to make me look good, and for that I could never have asked for more. And to each and every one of you, thank you for allowing me to continue to do my job this session. But for COVID, I might not have been able to participate in this year's session. Think about it. COVID is the reason we are now a Zoom society. In some ways, these remote meetings have allowed us to do things heretofore we not only thought impossible, but they were against our rules and not allowed. How nice and convenient it is now for someone from the Iron Range or Thief River Falls to provide valuable testimony without having to drive 4 or 5 hours, stay overnight, only to be allowed 5 minutes to testify. It's been a game changer. Now don't get me wrong, COVID is one of the worst things that has ever happened to our society, but I guess, out of bad, some good always comes. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, get vaccinated and boosted. So, thank you all again for allowing me to finish my career with dignity and pride. I want to especially thank Senator Miller and Senate leadership for making the seemingly impossible so simple. The Majority Caucus has welcomed me like one of their own, even if I didn't always vote with them. Your respect for me did not go unnoticed. And that is the same respect I received from the Minority Caucus. There were so many wonderful things said about me during the ALS bill, by both sides of the aisle, that I can't even begin to express the proper appreciation. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Finally, you can't do this job with any effectiveness without interacting with lobbyists. And because lobbyists are an integral part of the legislative process, we get to know some of them very well. I don't even want to start mentioning names, as I will undoubtedly forget someone that I should mention, but they play an essential role in fact-gathering, and are one of the groups of people we meet. The relationships can be lasting. They have a job to do, and oftentimes they are our only source of information. So, I thank them for their help. If you want to have fun, call a meeting with two lobbyists on opposing sides of a controversial issue. Then sit back and enjoy the show. Sparks will fly. Guaranteed. In closing, many of you attended the final Iron Range party with me as the chair of the Iron Range delegation. The outpouring of support, friendship, and love was overwhelming, so much so, I am at loss for words to describe it. I think the generosity, kindness, and raw emotion is something my family and I are humbled by and will never forget. I have received so much well-wishing, financial help, and prayers that it is gratifying to know that there is so much good still left in the world. Once again, I can't thank everyone enough. I do have to give a special shout out to my very good friend, Dick Cohen, for organizing, producing, and being master of ceremony. When he went over his plans with me, I was convinced there was no way he could pull it off in 2 short weeks. Dick, along with Laura and others, put it all together. I guess you could say it was a huge success. Once again, my gratitude is boundless to everyone. As I mentioned earlier, this job can be hard on families, especially if you live in rural Minnesota, several hours away. My family was no exception. When I think about the way it all started, my dad hand-painted 400 signs on half-inch plywood in his garage. They were heavy. That was a gesture of love. Of course, it hasn't always gone smoothly. But we made it, and I have to thank the entire family, my wife, Charlotte, and our children Chantel, Dante, and Danny, for everything they have had to endure due to my absence. I guess the ultimate culmination came with the passage of the ALS bill earlier this session. All of you have been a part of that, and it would not have gotten done without the support of each and every one of you. But I have to give a great big shout out to my kids for taking care of me in this last year or so, as they have gone above and beyond taking care of me. My sister, Mary Jo, and her husband, Richard, deserve the same thanks. So many people have stepped up to help, and I am eternally grateful. So, Mr. President, members, thank you for accommodating me today as well as all session long. 30 years went by fast, and I wish my successor all the best. Thank you very much.
Members, for the 22 others that are leaving, the bar has been set extremely high. The Senate will come to order. Senator, continuing on special orders, Senator, the next bill is Senate File 3266, number 55, on general orders. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate File 3266 deals with the Stadium Reserve Fund and buying off a wonderful asset that we have in this state, the U.S. Bank Stadium. Members, I believe it was May 12th, 10 years ago, was that historic day when we passed the bill to have a partnership with the state, the Vikings, and Minneapolis. And many of you on this floor remember that day and the 12 hours of debate. Unfortunately, many of you on this floor are not going to be around next year to see what happens to this tremendous asset that we have available. And the ability to pay this asset off as quickly as possible. So 10 years ago, the legislature approved the expansion of the statewide charitable gaming, the e-pull tabs, which was the primary financing of the stadium for the state. The proceeds were expected to cover the state's portion of $30.2 million on the annual debt service on the state of Minnesota's 2014 Series AB General Fund appropriation bonds. In 2013, revenue fell short. So we had a loophole, and we closed that, and that was the corporate franchise tax loophole that resulted in an additional $20 million of corporate franchise tax receipts available for the debt service. However, after that point, the sales of e-pull tabs, which was the first in the nation, increased dramatically. And in 2019, MMB removed the $20 million of the corporate franchise tax from the revenue fund source. Based on the February 22 state budget forecast, the stadium reserve account is now expected to have $326.8 million balance in next year, $581 million by 2025. That's after February forecast. Even with the $20 million of the corporate franchise tax that has been removed. So members, there is an opportunity to use this excess revenue and our reserves to finance the 2014 bonds and pass in excess of $200 million of net interest cost savings onto the taxpayers. The bonds for the stadium are callable next June 1st, 2023, 9.5 years after they've been issued. Again, I just want to stress how important it is to use the funds that are in the stadium reserve for the intended purpose that many of us voted for on this floor. Senate File 3266 does the following. It creates a stadium refinance fund, and the fund can only be used to defease or refinance the stadium appropriation bonds once they become callable in June 2023. And then on October 1st of each year, the Commissioner of MMB would transfer everything above the $44 million, which, as I said, the debt is right now 30.2, but $44 million was something that Commissioner France felt would be a safe number going forward for all the other expenses involved. And that would be enough to cover the annual debt service and, like I said, any related payments. And that would be put into the Stadium Reserve Fund. Annually, the Commissioner is required to analyze and report to the legislature, but I do have an amendment, Mr. President, that would take that out. So once the stadium appropriation bonds are paid off, the blink on revenue sources are repealed, and that's the only piece where the Vikings have a say in this bill, and that would be the stadium suite tax. That would be repealed. There was an amendment that was put on in finance, which addresses two issues that MMB has brought up concerning this potential way of paying off our stadium. And we've worked many, many meetings with MMB and the commissioner and the assistant commissioner. One of those areas is regarding the concern about arbitrage. And then the other concern is Minneapolis' obligation on their debt payments, which started in 2021. So we did put some language in finance that dealt with those two issues. The federal arbitrage concerns result when the state reserve funds and pledges those funds to pay the bonds or to refinance bonds while also earning interest on those funds. So the language added was to restrict the commissioner from generating interest earnings on the funds pledged to refinance the stadium. Otherwise, there would be a penalty. So that area of that bill cost $5 million. That's the estimated amount that we would have in earnings on interest. We also dealt with the Minneapolis piece, where back in 2014, the stadium debt was sold in 2014, and the Minneapolis payments didn't begin till 2021, which was part of the legislation, because Minneapolis was committed to buying off the convention center. So MS 297A.994 subdivision 4 established that Minneapolis would make payments to the state of Minnesota equal to $150 million, which is 2012 net present value. The city is responsible for those debt payments starting in 2021, and like I said, when the convention center debt was paid off. The capital improvement payments are $2 million annually, which grows with inflation, and the operating expense of $8 million. There's all three, the state, Vikings, and Minneapolis, agreed to that contract in 2012. The city is interested in a pro rata reduction after factoring the state's upfront payments and the reduction in the bond repayment obligations as bonds are refinanced or defeased. If passed, Minneapolis would see a significant benefit by using the excess and e-pull tab revenues to pay off the bonds early and relieving Minneapolis of its debt service obligations. They also receive significant revenue through events at the facility through entertainment taxes on food and beverage. And refinancing the stadium would free up their hospitality taxes for that purpose, which is their source of the bond payments. So basically, we're using the state's contribution and subsidizing the city's contribution. By doing this bill, Senate File 3266, Mr. President and members, we could shorten the debt of this stadium by 16 years with a $280.8 million contribution from the stadium reserve. If we contributed from the reserve $282.8 million, it would reduce the size of the refunding issue while leaving $44 million in the reserve for the current debt service payments. The present value savings of approximately $59.6 million, and the annual cash flow savings of $18.7 for 2027 and $30.2 million in FY28 to FY43. Total savings, cash flow savings of $502.4 million over the life of the bonds, or $219.6 million net to the stadium reserve contribution. So members, a lot of you were on the floor. I was the chief author of the stadium bill, and could not have passed without it. It was a bipartisan bill, absolutely. And it's a good bill. We have an opportunity here to make a difference to our state debt and to protect a state asset. With that, Mr. President, I do have the A6 amendment.
Senator Rosen moves the A6 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Rosen moves to amend Senate File 3266 as follows. Page 1, line 20. This is Amendment A-6.
To the A6 amendment, Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the A6 is largely technical. It would delete the section that I almost got into about a report that was due from the commissioner on the use of the money of the Stadium Reserve Fund and when the fund could be defeased or refinanced, the Stadium Reserve Fund. it's not necessary anymore. Like I said, the bonds are callable next year of June 1st, 2023. And everything else, Mr. President, is just, we forgot to amend it in finance.
Discussion to the A6 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of the A6 amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the motion does prevail. The amendment is adopted. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have the A8 amendment.
Senator Rosen moves the A8 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Rosen moves to amend Senate File 3266 as follows. Page 2 after line 29, insert. This is Amendment A-8.
To the A8 amendment, Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. The A8 amendment basically would, even though Minneapolis is receiving a tremendous benefit by making sure that these bonds can be paid off in full by 2017, there would be no debt payment for them ongoing after that. If we use the funding mechanism, that is at the hands of MMB. There is a lot of angst, I should say, over in the House about what is Minneapolis getting from this bill. And I've heard that they're concerned that the Vikings are going to have a big windfall. This is not about that. This is about protection of a state asset and using the resources that we have available that were intended on that very issue. However, the 8 amendment does turn off Minneapolis payment for $2.5 million per year for 2 years, and it because they have their past liability for the 7 years, they haven't been paying on that. So we would give them a break on their payment for $2.5 million per year for 2 years, and then the rest of it is just, you know, fairly language that would just say basically MMB it needs to recalculate those figures, and that is a carrot. Mr. President, I would like to have the discussion on it, and then after that I'm going to withdraw the 8 amendment.
To the A8 amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Rosen. I understand you're going to withdraw the amendment, but my question is, had you discussed this idea and this proposal with either the City of Minneapolis itself and/or our delegation chair, Senator Champion? This is the first I'm seeing of this proposal. Of course, as you can imagine, I think just offering a 2-year relief of debt repayment is probably insufficient. But my question is, had you had discussions with either our delegation chair or the city itself on this matter?
Senator Rosen will yield. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Senator Dibble. Yes, I have been in conversation with Senator Champion about this. I believe that this amendment was given to him. And absolutely, the city of Minneapolis has been involved in all the negotiations, and they are very comfortable with the original language, which we crafted, which is in the bill, to make sure that the calculation that is before MMB, when those bonds are refinanced, or when they're refinanced, there would be a pro-rata benefit to the city of Minneapolis.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Rosen. Just for clarity, Senator Rosen and I did have some conversation about this, and I know that she was thinking about it and wasn't sure if she was going to submit it today. And I did have a preliminary discussion about the amount of time that it would cover. And I know that I would hope that Senator Rosen would be open to some ongoing discussions about it, because this amendment provides for roughly $5 million in savings. And I know one of the things that the city of Minneapolis has been looking for is some level of forgiveness for some past debt, which amounts to roughly $62.8 million. Even if that's projected with some other number going forward, it would seem to be much more unbalanced, and not to mention some proportional savings for the city of Minneapolis if these bonds are refinanced now. So I would hope that Senator Rosen would be open to that, but I would think right now that the $5 million number is a great starting point, and really looks to Senator Rosen trying to find some way to be as thoughtful as possible, but I really wish that it could go just a little further. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion to the A8 amendment? Senator Rosen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Champion please yield?
He will yield. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Champion, would you happen to know how much the city would save if these bonds were defeased by 2017? What would be the amount that the city would save? Because their debt relief would also be a part of what would be calculated.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I understand your question, and if I don't answer it, please accept my apologies and blame it on my head and not my heart. As pertains to when the city of Minneapolis was supposed to, pay, and that money was paid by the state, that number is $62.8 million. As it pertains to how much the city will save going forward with the dollars going forward, when we think in terms of refinancing the bonds, I don't know exactly what that number is, but one of the things that I would hope that we would understand, and that those who are listening to us would understand, the city of Minneapolis pays not just for the number that we're talking about now, but also operational costs, and they pay roughly $2 million a year, it's my understanding. And then when we think in terms of the debt payments, is roughly $6 million a year. So there's other debt that the city of Minneapolis is responsible to pay for as pertains to the stadium. And I do recognize that it was a part of a global agreement, and there was other things that were, looked at. And so I do not diminish that being a part of this conversation. So that's what I understand. Outside of the savings that could happen, especially if the language is fair around proportional savings, if the bonds are refinanced, and some forgiveness when we think in terms of what has already been contributed to, and then for us to recognize that even with those, with that consideration, the city of Minneapolis still has at least 3 other revenue positions that they are responsible for going forward.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I had asked the city of Minneapolis when they were in front of the Finance Committee to give me a number from what they thought the city would be saving when the bonds are defeased. And it's hard to determine that. But I did ask the folks that did the financing for the stadium back in 2012, and it's approximately $65 million in cash flow savings for the city of Minneapolis when the bonds are defeased. That's a tremendous savings. No one has benefited more than the city of Minneapolis for having that stadium in their neighborhood. That city came alive. It is vibrant. It had $1.5 billion on the books the day the bill was signed for construction all around the stadium. And if you remember the Metrodome, there was nothing in those parking lots. There was just empty parking lots around the dome. And now you go down there and it's transformed. So I'm not quite sure why we need to cut a deal with Minneapolis when they are getting a tremendous benefit from the state, because the state is going to be basically paying off their debt by refinancing early. And there's various scenarios MMB can work on through this. They can continue paying off the $44 million ongoing till 2043 and just park that money in the stadium reserve, and it's potentially up for grabs, because it has been for as long as I've known the stadium reserve. Or they could have the conservative and the appropriate response to paying off that stadium early by defeasing those bonds in 2017. And that would give Minneapolis a tremendous break. Things are going to be different next year. Things are going to definitely be different around here. And I hope and I pray that these state assets are taken care of. And one of them is the stadium reserve that needs to have some responsibility to the stadium for a capital improvement fund. There's many things that need to continue. So members, please step up and do this, because I won't be here and Senator St. John won't be here, and many of us that worked so hard on that bill, we won't be around to protect that stadium reserve and make sure that that stadium is paid off in a timely manner. So with that, Mr. President, I'd like to withdraw the A8 amendment.
Senator Rosen withdraws the A8 amendment. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure I clarify something because I was accurate in my recitation of what I believe the landscape or the picture is, but specifically to Senator Rosen's question as to what amount would be saved by the city of Minneapolis if these bonds were refinanced, it's my understanding that that exact number cannot be calculated right now without knowing what the interest rates are and just a number of other factors that would be important. So while I believe there would be some savings, while I also respectfully agree that things will and could be different next year, I certainly understand that. That's why I wish and hope that both Senator Rosen and all the other folks involved will have an opportunity to find common ground and find a space in which to go forward together, because I think it could potentially work to everyone's benefit. So thank you, and thank you, Senator Rosen, as well.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I don't know why the chief author of Senate File 3266 is taking this opportunity to cast aspersions or criticize Minneapolis. Minneapolis has been a good partner on the stadium and in fact has been putting forth tremendous effort both in terms of helping with stadium operations as well as financing part of the debt that has built the stadium. Certainly there is a lot of economic activity in and around the stadium. It's not entirely attributable to the stadium. If you look around the country during that same period of time, downtowns all over the country were thriving and bustling, and centers of new residential and entertainment and all kinds of economic activity. Certainly the great park across from the stadium has been a good thing, and some of the activity in and around the stadium has been good and positive, and that's great. And Mr. President, members, I'll just remind you that the vast majority of that economic activity, whether that's the form of income taxes or sales taxes, accrues to the state of Minnesota. $2 billion can be easily attributed as generated from Minneapolis economic activity going into the coffers of the state of Minnesota, when we look at far, far less than that coming back in the form of aids and credits. So this is all to everyone's benefit. And if there's going to be a benefit to the state through this effort to refinance or defease the bonds, the partners should all share in that proportionally and equally. Mr. President, City of Minneapolis has enacted a number of taxes, and people complain about how high the taxes are, particularly in the downtown district, for various things, food and lodging, liquor, beverage, et cetera. But the fact is that all of those sources are all dedicated to pay for the kinds of facilities that a lot of people use that have that statewide benefit, generating those resources that go to the state's general fund to do all the kinds of things we like to pay for in this chamber. So, Mr. President, I would offer the A9 amendment.
Senator Dibble moves the A9 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Dibble moves to amend Senate File 3266 as follows. Page 2 after line 21, insert. This is Amendment A-9.
To the A9 amendment, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to request a roll call on the
Roll
A9.
call requested, roll call granted. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Rosen reassured us earlier that The Vikings have no interest and would receive no benefit from this deal. So the language at the top is simply comfort language to say that that, in fact, will not happen. Senator Rosen talked about the generosity, if you will, of the state in taking care of the debt payments because the city of Minneapolis had a call on those resources to help pay off the convention center bonding. And then when it was time for the city to start kicking in resources, the pandemic downturn had suppressed those resources, and the city was unable to generate sufficient revenues to start paying its obligation towards the stadium debt financing. And so there was, if you will, a cash advance. And so this bill would forgive that from this, $500 and some million, I think, stadium reserve that we just heard about. And then there's some policy language towards the end of the amendment that says that should the stadium bonds be refinanced or defeased, the city of Minneapolis would receive proportional consideration in its future debt obligations. Thank you, Mr. President.
To the A9 amendment, Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and Senator Dibble, I want to make sure that it is clearly stated I am very much appreciative of Minneapolis and their commitment and to this agreement. Could not have done this bill, this asset without them. They have been amazing. There is no animosity, anger, maybe a little towards the House, but not to Minneapolis. They have come to the table and they've worked very well, and there was a partnership in it. And also, I'd like to make a huge shout out to Governor Dayton. It was amazing, that relationship with the governor and Representative Lanning from the House and myself to pass this historic stadium bill. So Minneapolis absolutely will get a benefit, well-deserved, if these bonds are refinanced or defeased. Minneapolis has been working with MMB currently. I have a letter from them stating that very fact, and that those negotiations and work will continue when it's time that they will take a look at those bonds. And if there's any cost savings, which I'm sure there will be, that will be prorated back to Minneapolis and to the state's share also of what they've been carrying on the debt for the last 7 years. But ongoing, if we pay this debt off in 2017, which we have an option to do, Minneapolis is also relieved of their debt. I want to make sure everybody understands that. So I can't be more grateful for Minneapolis and their work on this. But I will stand to oppose this amendment because it is overreach. It is something that is not appropriate. And I think when you truly understand the financing of this, to allow Minneapolis to, as I said, have their debt relieved after these bonds are paid off is a huge windfall. And with that, Mr. President, I move that Senate File 3266 be laid on the table.
Senator Rosen moves to lay the bill on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion does prevail. The bill is laid on the table. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion. I move to have recess to the call of the President.
Senator Rosen moves to recess to the call of the President. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion does prevail, and the Senate is in recess.